It's a very sad story. And I got to know him. He was such a beautiful man, such a lovely man. Somewhere I saw footage and I saw this thing and I thought, well, surely you've seen this. That was a loss that clearly had a huge effect. The story, and it's absolutely unbelievable.
The events that unfolded in Brentwood on that fateful weekend were not sudden. They were a result of pressure, tension, and unresolved emotional struggles that had been building for years. The Christmas party hosted by Conan O'Brien, meant to be a joyful gathering of friends, celebrities, and Hollywood elites, became an unexpected stage for a deeply unsettling family confrontation. Rob Reiner, a man known for his warmth, humor, and legendary contributions to film, arrived with his wife Michelle and his son Nick, hoping to enjoy a night of celebration and connection. From the moment they walked through the elegant, pine-scented estate, however, the atmosphere shifted. Guests who had been laughing and chatting felt the tension immediately. There was something in the way Nick moved, in the intensity of his gaze, that signaled trouble. This wasn't a normal family disagreement or teenage rebellion. It was raw, public, and emotionally charged. People at the party could feel in the room, though they may not have known exactly what was about to unfold. Rob appeared tense, trying to manage the situation, wearing a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. He was attempting to control what seemed uncontrollable, to keep his son within the boundaries of safety and respect, while the son, for reasons only he fully understood, moved with purpose, breaking through social conventions and expectations. Nick's behavior was deliberate, unsettling, and emotionally aggressive. He tested boundaries, challenged authority, and disrupted the calm of the party in a way that could not be ignored. As the night progressed, the confrontation escalated. What started as subtle tension became a loud argument, witnessed by friends and colleagues who had known the family for decades. Rob and Michelle tried to manage the situation quietly, but the signs of danger were impossible to ignore. Guests watched the family struggling under pressure, with history, emotions, and unresolved conflict bubbling up to the surface. The party, meant to be a joyful celebration, had become a prelude to a tragedy that would soon leave the entire community shaken. The warning signs were clear, though many outsiders might have missed them. Nick Reiner's behavior had been growing increasingly erratic in the weeks leading up to the party. Friends and family noticed changes, sharp moods, intense focus, and behavior that seemed detached from ordinary social norms. Rob Reiner, despite his decades of experience in navigating complex personalities on film sets, recognized something deeply troubling. He could see it in his son's eyes, in the tension of his movements, and in the way he interacted with others. The family had faced challenges before, including mental health struggles and previous rehab visits, but nothing had prepared them for what they would witness that night. In the glow of festive lights and the warmth of holiday cheer, the undercurrent of fear and worry was palpable. The argument that erupted was not simply about small misunderstandings or fleeting irritations. It was an intense emotional clash, a desperate attempt to assert control, to communicate frustration, and confront the deep-seated issues that had gone unresolved for too long. Rob tried to mediate, to reason with Nick, and to restore a sense of calm, but Nick's behavior was erratic and purposeful, each interaction charged with tension. Witnesses describe a room where conversations froze, smiles tightened, and even seasoned Hollywood professionals felt the discomfort. It was not just a disagreement. It was a demonstration of the growing chasm between a father and son, a visible struggle that foreshadowed the tragedy that would soon unfold. Conan O'Brien, observing quietly, saw the subtle but unmistakable signals: raised voices, controlled aggression, and the emotional strain that hung over the room like a shadow. The warnings were there, loud and clear, but no one could predict the devastating consequences that were about to follow. That night marked a turning point. The Christmas party, filled with laughter and tradition, became a place where the private fractures of family were laid bare in the most public of ways. The event would later be remembered not for the joy it intended to bring, but for the fear, tension, and irreversible breakdown that occurred in a matter of hours. The morning after the party brought a stark contrast to the chaos of the night before. Brentwood awoke to bright sunlight, perfect lawns, and the quiet normalcy that outsiders would expect from an elite neighborhood. Yet behind the gates of the Reiner estate, the calm was deceptive. Something had shifted irrevocably. The first indication that something was terribly wrong came not from police sirens or neighbors' calls, but from someone close to the family. A daughter, living just across the street, sensed that the usual rhythm of the morning was broken. She approached the house instinctively, aware that the normal routines of life might be concealing something far darker. Inside, the environment felt off, quiet, heavy, and unwelcoming. The daughter moved through the halls she had known her whole life, each step echoing in a space that no longer felt safe. What she discovered immediately confirmed her deepest fears. The tragedy that had been looming since the previous night had arrived. Rob and Michelle Reiner, people who had devoted themselves to family, community, and art, had been attacked in their own home. The shock of the discovery, made by someone so intimately connected to the family, was profound. Emergency responders would arrive soon after, but the realization of loss was immediate and undeniable. The house, once a place of comfort and laughter, had become a crime scene. The presence of violence where trust once resided amplified the horror. There was no forced entry, no indication of an outside threat. The danger came from within, a devastating betrayal that was impossible to ignore. That morning would mark the start of a public conversation that went far beyond celebrity gossip, raising questions about mental illness, familial boundaries, and how warning signs can be missed, even by those closest to the situation. It was a moment of reckoning, not just for the family, but for the community, watching in disbelief. The contrast between the serene neighborhood and the intense personal tragedy inside highlighted the fragility of safety and the devastating consequences when problems go unaddressed. The investigation that followed confirmed what observers had feared. This was not a random act or an accident. Forensic experts and police investigators carefully reconstructed the timeline, examining every detail of the Reiner estate. There was no forced entry. Valuables were untouched. The evidence pointed to someone who had been trusted, someone who had intimate knowledge of the home and its routines. Investigators focused on the interactions from a night before, the movements inside the house, and the psychological state of Nick Reiner, who had been exhibiting alarming behavior prior to the tragedy. Surveillance footage from a gas station further complicated the narrative. It showed Nick calm, deliberate, and composed, challenging common assumptions about mental breakdowns. The footage depicted a person capable of managing the aftermath of crime while blending into public life, a detail that contradicted the idea of a chaotic, uncontrolled act. Forensic science, including trace evidence, patterns of injuries, and behavioral analysis, provided critical insights into the nature of the attack. Experts emphasized that the violence was personal and calculated, not random. The pattern of the crime indicated overkill, a level of emotional intensity that confirmed the deep-seated familial conflict. Specialists noted that extreme force in close-range attacks often leave the aggressor with biological markers, connecting them directly to the act itself. The absence of disorder in the house further indicated that the attack was not opportunistic, but deliberate. These details formed the backbone of the investigation, shaping how prosecutors and defense attorneys would construct their arguments. The case highlighted not just the brutality of the act, but the complexity of human behavior, mental health, and family dynamics. It became clear that understanding what happened required more than just a review of the crime scene. It required examining years of unresolved conflict, patterns of behavior, and the intersection of mental illness and personal responsibility. Nick Reiner's struggles with mental health were well documented, though often misunderstood or overlooked. Diagnosed with schizophrenia and under psychiatric care, Nick had been in and out of rehab for years. In the month before the tragedy, his behavior reportedly became increasingly erratic, alarming both family and professionals. Friends and family noted sudden mood swings, moments of aggression, and a detachment from reality that seemed to intensify with each passing day. In response, his doctors adjusted his medications, trying to stabilize him, but the changes only complicated his condition. Mental health treatment is delicate, often requiring precise medication combinations and close monitoring. Even small deviations can exacerbate symptoms, which is exactly what appeared to be happening with Nick. Reports indicate that the medications, combined with ongoing substance use, created a volatile environment. Instead of calming him, they heightened his paranoia and unpredictability. Rob Reiner, aware of these warning signs, tried to intervene, attempting to provide guidance, support, and control in the home environment. However, when mental illness collides with untreated or worsening symptoms, even the most attentive family cannot always prevent tragedy. This story highlights the reality that love, resources, and intervention may not always be enough when the mental health crisis reaches a critical stage. It also demonstrates how public perception can differ dramatically from reality. To outsiders, Nick may have appeared quiet, polite, or even normal at times, but his internal struggles were escalating beyond anyone's ability to manage without intensive care. Understanding these factors is critical to understanding the events leading to the tragedy. The signs were present, and they were being missed, misunderstood, or underestimated. The warning signs at the party were just the most visible manifestation of deeper issues that had been quietly building for years inside a family desperate for help, but struggling to find the right support. The actual moment of tragedy was sudden yet, in retrospect, not unexpected given the escalation of tension, warnings, and prior behavior. Early that Sunday morning, the reality that the previous night's warning signs had been ignored hit the family and neighborhood like a storm. The Reiner estate, normally a symbol of Hollywood success and family warmth, became a scene of horror and despair. Ro Reiner, the daughter, arrived at the home sensing something was wrong, a gut feeling that her instincts told her could not be ignored. Moving to the halls of the house she had known her whole life, she immediately realized that the familiar environment had transformed into something terrifying and alien. The first discovery of Rob and Michelle Reiner's fate left her in shock, too overwhelmed to comprehend the full scale of the situation. Emergency responders would later confirm the deaths. But for her, the understanding was immediate and visceral. There was no stage scene, no outside intruder. This had happened inside the home, by someone who had been trusted, nurtured, and loved. The psychological impact of discovering such an intimate betrayal cannot be overstated. When violence comes within the family, it destroys a fundamental sense of safety and stability that every person assumes exists in their home. For neighbors, witnesses, and the community, the aftermath raised profound questions. How could a seemingly normal family, protected by wealth, connections, and access to care, experience such an unimaginable event? The tragedy of that morning was more than a shocking headline. It became a cautionary tale about the limits of control, the dangers of untreated mental illness, and the consequences of ignoring warning signs, even when they appear in plain sight. Forensic experts played a pivotal role in revealing the reality behind the tragedy. When investigators arrived, they immediately noted the absence of forced entry, broken doors, or signs of an external attack. This indicated that the perpetrator was someone inside the home, someone intimately familiar with its layout and daily routines. Experts meticulously examined the Reiner estate, studying traces of evidence, patterns of injuries, and the organization of the crime scene. The injuries themselves indicated rage and personal intent rather than random violence or robbery gone wrong. This level of violence is often referred to as overkill, a sign that the attack was emotionally charged and deeply personal. Forensic science further revealed what ordinary observation might miss. When extreme force is used at close range, the aggressor often leaves behind biological evidence that cannot be faked or removed. Blood, skin, and other trace evidence can merge in ways that clearly indicate the timing and the actor involved. This biochemical handshake confirmed that the Reiner's attacker was present during the act, fully engaged and deliberate. Surveillance footage from public locations added another layer of insight. Nick Reiner was captured calmly performing routine tasks after the incident, demonstrating a level of composure that contradicted the expectation of chaotic behavior following such a crime. His behavior showed careful control, awareness, and calculation, reinforcing the forensic conclusion that this was a premeditated act carried out by someone capable of managing both the act and its immediate aftermath. The forensic analysis, combined with behavioral observation, provided a clear narrative. This was a crime rooted in personal conflict, mental health challenges, and unresolved family tension, not randomness or external threat. As the investigation progressed, the legal process highlighted the complexity of cases involving mental health and extreme violence. Nick Reiner's diagnosis, prior behavior, and the events leading up to the crime became central to both prosecution and defense strategies. On one hand, the defense could argue that schizophrenia and medication issues impaired his ability to understand consequences, framing the act as a result of mental illness rather than intent. On the other hand, prosecutors could point to surveillance footage, forensic evidence, and the deliberate nature of actions before and after the incident to demonstrate awareness, planning, and personal responsibility. This conflict underscores the challenge courts face when mental illness intersects with violent acts. Public perception also plays a significant role, as viewers and media grapple with the tension between empathy for mental illness and outrage over violent behavior. The case became a critical example of how legal systems attempt to balance treatment, accountability, and justice, particularly when the individual involved has access to resources, high-profile connections, and a history of care. Experts continue to debate the nuances of intent, mental health, and responsibility, highlighting how complex and multi-layered these situations are. For families, the legal process can feel like an additional burden layered onto an already devastating personal tragedy. For society at large, it raises questions about mental health resources, early intervention, and the warning signs that often go unnoticed until it is too late. The tragedy of Rob and Michelle Reiner sent shockwaves through both the Hollywood community and the public at large. Fans, colleagues, and neighbors struggled to process the news, grappling with disbelief, sorrow, and anger. Social media was flooded with condolences and tributes, as people tried to honor the lives of two individuals who had touched so many. But alongside the mourning, the story also sparked difficult conversations about warning signs, family dynamics, and the responsibility of those surrounding someone struggling with mental health issues. Rob and Michelle's children, Jake and Romy Reiner, released statements describing the unimaginable pain they were experiencing, emphasizing that their parents were not only loved family members, but also irreplaceable friends and mentors to many. Their words reminded the public that behind the headlines were real human beings, lives intricately woven with love, care, and shared history. Friends and associates recalled moments from the party, noting that the tension was palpable and that Rob had expressed fear about Nick's escalating behavior. Some guests admitted they wished they had acted differently, made that crucial phone call to emergency services, or intervened in a way that might have prevented the outcome. For Hollywood insiders, the event shattered assumptions about wealth, influence, and access to care offering complete protection. Even in environments designed for safety, tragedy can strike when underlying issues remain unaddressed. Beyond the grief, these reactions highlighted a universal struggle: how to balance compassion with accountability when someone close is spiraling out of control. While the family navigated their heartbreak, the public grappled with the difficult truth that love, access, and good intentions are not always enough to prevent calamity, particularly when mental illness intersects with unchecked behavior, untreated symptoms, and long-standing family tension. The overwhelming response revealed a collective recognition that tragedy like this is never isolated, and it forces society to confront uncomfortable realities about awareness, intervention, and the limits of care. The Reiner family tragedy underscores a sobering lesson. Untreated or poorly managed mental illness can have devastating consequences, even when a family is affluent, connected, and deeply caring. Mental health issues like schizophrenia require careful attention, proper medication management, and professional oversight. When combined with substance abuse or noncompliance with treatment, the results can be unpredictable and dangerous. For Rob and Michelle Reiner, years of support, access to top-tier doctors, and a loving environment were ultimately insufficient to control the progression of Nick's condition. This reality is not unique to high-profile families. It mirrors experiences across all socioeconomic levels, where loved ones often struggle to know when to intervene and how to enforce boundaries without compromising care. The tragedy also emphasizes the importance of recognizing patterns of escalation. Behavioral warning signs are rarely sudden. They often build quietly over time, like pressure in a sealed container. Emotional outbursts, withdrawal, verbal aggression, and other cues are signals that professional intervention is necessary. Yet families, motivated by love and hope, frequently excuse or rationalize concerning behavior, believing that affection, reassurance, or repeated chances will suffice. The Reiner case illustrates how the combination of untreated mental illness, family loyalty, and delayed intervention can culminate in catastrophic outcomes. It also raises questions about societal responsibility. How can communities, mental health professionals, and social networks better support families facing escalating risk? What systems exist to protect both the individuals struggling and those around them when danger is looming? These questions go beyond Hollywood or celebrity headlines. They reflect universal dilemmas about care, accountability, and prevention. By examining the warning signs, the missed opportunities, and the complexity of mental health treatment, we gain insight not only into what happened in the Reiner home, but also into how similar tragedies might be prevented in the future through earlier recognition, stronger boundaries, and comprehensive professional support. Amid the horror, it is critical to remember the lives and legacies of Rob and Michelle Reiner themselves. Rob Reiner's career spanned decades, bringing joy, empathy, and meaning to audiences through films like The Princess Bride, Stand By Me, and When Harry Met Sally. His storytelling consistently reflected values of loyalty, love, and compassion, qualities he sought to live out off-screen. Michelle Reiner, while less publicly known, played a central role in sustaining the family, providing emotional stability and supporting not only Rob but also their children. Her presence was a steadying force through years of professional pressure and family challenges. Together, the Reiners exemplified devotion, resilience, and care for others, both in their personal lives and their public work. Tragic as their deaths were, they should not define their entire existence. The lessons they leave behind are as much about human connection, empathy, and dedication as about cautionary tales of mental health. In remembering their lives, one must focus on their contributions to art, community, and family rather than solely on the violent end. Their story encourages reflection on how to nurture relationships, recognize warning signs, and balance hope with precaution. They remind us that even in the most caring environments, circumstances can spiral beyond control, and that the measure of a life is not its ending, but the compassion, joy, and positive impact created along the way. Ultimately, the tragedy of the Reiner family continues to ripple outward, affecting communities, legal systems, mental health professionals, and families everywhere. It serves as both a warning and a lesson. Wealth, influence, and resources do not guarantee safety, and love alone cannot always overcome the complexities of untreated or escalating mental illness. Conversations about boundaries, intervention, and professional care are difficult but necessary, emphasizing that awareness and proactive action can sometimes prevent irreparable outcomes.